All right, Representative Miguez, you have House Bill 602.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members.
There's an indication there's an amendment. Does the amendment get the bill in the form to which you wish to present it?
There's an amendment, the first one for clarification and to add the students. I'd like to offer those up immediately to put them in the proper posture, if you'd oblige me.
Let's do that. Ms. Fogelman, you have that amendment? Okay. Ms. Fogelman's going to expand on the amendment.
Mr. Chairman and members, the amendment set is number 2974. It's available on the internet. It would amend proposed law to expand its application to students. So it would read, if the concealed handgun permittee is a teacher, administrator, or employee of any school acting within the course and scope of his employment, or is a student of any school, the provisions of this section shall not be construed to authorize the teacher, administrator, employee, or student of the school to carry a concealed handgun into any school, school campus, or school bus as defined by RS 1495.6 unless specifically authorized to do so by law.
Well, when we were drafting the bill, the staff knew my original intent. I ran it by a good friend of mine, an attorney on the committee, and he sort of acted as a voice of reason and was able to get me some changes for clarification purposes, and I appreciate if we can get this on, and then we could debate the bill.
Okay, Representative Baclaw offers the amendment. Is there any opposition to the amendment? Would there be no opposition? The amendment is adopted. Table is yours, Representative Miguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members. So today I bring you House Bill 602, and this deals specifically and only inside of the concealed carry law provision. It repeals the exemption within concealed carry law that prohibits carrying on school property. But it's important to point out that it does not authorize a teacher, administrator, or student to carry on property, especially after the amendment we just offered. This committee was able to hear testimony on some different proposals, one by Representative Garofalo that dealt with the teacher's ability to carry firearms, another one by Representative Emerson that dealt with students' ability to carry firearms. My bill is different. It doesn't deal with the school safety system at all. It strictly deals with self-defense. The bill is narrowly tailored to allow visitors who are on school property and who are also concealed carry permit holders to carry. For layman's terms, we're dealing with people who are there briefly, like parents, grandparents, relatives. And it's important, very important to point out that it only allows this right to self-defense to those who have a concealed carry permit in the state of Louisiana. Some of the highlights, and I know you've studied concealed carry permit law, it's very extensive. Some of the highlights on that is you have to be 21 or older to get a concealed carry permit. You must be a law-abiding citizen. That means you can't have any violent prior felonies. There's also training requirements. There's extensive background checks by both state police and FBI. You can't have any substance abuse issues, no mental defects, no past violent behavior. It's a very strict, heightened standard in order to qualify and to be qualified under this bill as well. As you know, in 2015 or 16, my memory's jogging, the feds, I had carried a bill that talked about how Louisiana concealed carry law is our most strictest gun law in the state of Louisiana. I believe in 2013 or 14, the feds acknowledged that this is the most heightened standard law that we have in the state of Louisiana. This bill seeks to allow certain law-abiding citizens the ability to defend themselves on school property if they're a concealed carry permit holder. That's the crux of the bill. I would be happy to answer any questions. I know there's probably some people here to speak on the bill as well.
Okay. Representative Stefanski, is your question for the author?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Miguez, as we looked at your bill and discussed it, I believe I have an amendment that's going to maybe tailor it down a little bit more, I think, to ease some concerns about a school's ability to restrict certain venues or buildings. And so at this time, I'd like to offer that amendment.
Okay, who has the amendment? Ms. Fogelman? All right, Ms. Fogelman, won't you expand on the amendment?
Mr. Chairman and members, the amendment being offered by Representative Stefanski is number 3539. It adds that a proposed law does not limit the authority of the school to prohibit or regulate the carrying of firearms by a person in certain venues and facilities of the school unless the person is otherwise authorized to do so by law.
So as I'm reading the amendment, basically this is going to allow that schools, which means all schools, permissive ability to still restrict some venues and high critical facilities, and I think it does narrowly tailor the bill down and bring some comfort in the piece of legislation. I wouldn't have any issues with that coming on.
Okay. Representative Stefanski, oh, you have a question on the amendment?
I was going to elaborate on the amendment.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, and I think, this would, I believe, Representative Miguez, eliminate some concerns about, well, if we have a certain building, certain venue, sports venue, that we don't want people, it's our school policy not to have a person bringing in a gun, whether concealed carry or not. We still have the ability as a school to be able to limit that, but you can't blanket limit the whole campus.
Right.
So
And I think it's also, I guess, when you're thinking about that, it's important to point out that usually those type of facilities have adequate security already provided in some way, shape, or form. So you are providing some defense. And in these other situations where security is not provided adequately, you need the ability to defend yourself and your loved ones.
I think you have a good bill, Representative Miguez, and I'd be happy to support it if my amendment gets on. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Are there questions on the amendment?
Yes, I have a question on the amendment.
Okay. Let me. Okay. Representative Carter's number one. Representative Carter's your question on the bill or the amendment?
On the bill.
Okay. Yeah, no, I'm trying to look. Representative Norton, your question's on the amendment. You're first. Okay, so Representative Norton, question on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may, on the amendment, would you please explain that amendment in the actual locations that that gun can be carried or it can be placed, the exact locations on the campus? I'm just asking.
And I don't want to speak for Representative Stefanski, but I believe what he's trying to do with this this amendment is it allows the schools, any school, to decide whether what venues and what facilities that they would restrict. But they just, as it applies to the bill, they wouldn't just be able to do a blanket gun-free zone and cross the entire facility. But they may say, I think, did you bring up a particular sporting arena? Or some type of building, maybe a classroom, or maybe the dean's office or a library, and they could restrict.
So let me get a clear understanding, and I
facility.
apologize for cutting you off. Are we saying in this amendment? The only place that you cannot carry that gun is at a sport authority, sport area? Are you saying that you're giving the school the discretion
Yes.
to decide where that gun can be placed or held,
They would
or whatever the case may be?
Nothing in the provision would prevent, if this amendment got on, would prevent the school from prohibiting
having the
carrying
option?
a firearm in certain venues, demarcated areas, or facilities. So they would have the option. It'd be up to the school. Some schools may decide, well,
I'm good. I just
Okay.
needed to know what the amendment.
happy to clarify that.
Yeah,
Appreciate
and
the
I won't
question.
object to the amendment when that time comes, Mr. Chairman.
Will the Okay, Representative Pilot, your questions on the amendment. Representative Marcel, your questions on the bill or the amendment? Okay, Representative Pilot for a question on the amendment.
Representative Miguez, the word facilities, you don't think that gut your bill?
No, Representative Pollock, facilities deals with buildings, and venues deal with certain, sporting arenas or those types of events where adequate security is provided. There's a lot of different situations. Current law, how the statute's written, you can't have a firearm in this entire campus gun-free zone with 1,000 feet. You may have a situation, and I know a former legislator who may be I think he actually lives in this situation, where you in a neighborhood next to a school, and constitutionally there are firearms on school campus now. There's a lot of different exceptions. One of those is in your vehicle, because that's constitutionally protected. It's also constitutionally protected that you can have a gun in your dormitory, and you can bring that gun from your vehicle to your dormitory. The same rule would apply in a subdivision where you can bring your gun from your vehicle to your home, but maybe you want to go down the road and walk your dog, and you're near the school campus, or you walk, maybe near, somewhere's around the school. You should have the ability to defend yourself and to protect yourself. I think this cleans up, some of the current law, but it still allows, it's very permissive, allows the schools, whether they decide whether they can restrict a certain sporting venue or a certain building from carrying there. I think this amendment, I think it'll make it puts it in a better posture where it may make some of the members on this committee a little bit more comfortable moving this bill forward through the process. But I think regardless, I would support the bill in either fashion. But I like to see the bill move forward, and I'm ready and willing to work with stakeholders. I think I've done that thus far, and I continue to commit to do that.
All right, thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Are there more questions on the amendment? Oh, Representative Dwight, question on the amendment. Let me hit you there you go.
I just had some clarification. I think you may have answered it, but who grants the authority? Is it the school, like the school board, or
it would be whatever the governing authority is for that school. You know, this applies to all schools. So universities would probably be, I guess, whether they're governed by regents or they're governed by their university president. I guess every school could determine whatever their government authority is. They would make the same determination they would with any other school policy.
So would this apply to high schools and middle schools?
It applies to all schools. We want to keep it across the board, so it'd be permissive to any school.
And that's my question. At that point, is it the principal of the school, or is it the school board, or is it the administrator of the school?
That's a very good question. I can't answer it 100% with authority, but whoever makes the decisions for policy making on that school, whether that's the school board, the superintendent, or the principal, I'd imagine that it would be one of those individuals. Whoever's governing the rule and policy making for that school, whether it's a K through 12 school or whether it's a university. I think that gets more into schools and how they're run.
Yeah, I support it, but I'm worried that, like in my district, we have numerous schools and we'd have different policies within Calcasieu Parish. You know, you may have one school let you do this because the principal approves it, and another principal doesn't. I didn't know if it was the principal or the school board.
I really think this would be higher than the principal. This would go to whether, and you may know the act better than I, whether it be the superintendent or the school board. They would make that determination in the K through 12 scenario.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. I don't believe there's any more questions on the amendment. Representative Stefanski has offered an amendment by which Representative Norton has objected. Ms. Spivey will call the roll. A vote yes would be to amend the bill as consistent with Representative Stefanski's amendment language. A vote no would be to leave the bill in its original posture. So Ms. Spivey, please call the roll.
Representative Mack?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Bacala? Yes. Representative Bagneris? Representative Carpenter? No. Representative Cruz?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Duplessis? No. Representative Dwight? Yes. Representative Gaines? No. Representative Hazel?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Hodges? Yes. Representative Howard?
Yes.
Yes. Representative James? Representative Marcel? No. Representative Marino? Yes. Representative Muscarello? Yes. Representative Norton? No. Representative Pilot? Yes. Representative Stefanski? Yes. 11 yeas, 5 nays.
Okay, the amendment gets on. Okay, Representative Carpenter, you're first in the queue. A question on the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My good friend, Representative Miguez.
How you doing, Representative Carter?
Hi, how are you?
Carpenter, excuse me.
I know, you never get that name right, do you? Yeah.
I was looking at my paperwork. I apologize.
That's okay. Have you spoken with any of who are the stakeholders that you spoke with when you thought about bringing this bill? You mentioned that you discussed it with the stakeholders. Who are some of those stakeholders?
I'm not sure if I mentioned that I discussed it with stakeholders.
You did.
But if I were to, what I know about the bill, the stakeholders will likely be anyone that has a concealed carry permit in the state of Louisiana, any governing authority that issues those licenses, and I guess anyone that has a school or the governing authorities for those schools. I mean, anybody that's affected by this bill would be a stakeholder, as well as maybe some law enforcement agencies. I mean, I did speak with the Sheriff's Association, but I didn't, just off the top of my head.
Have you talked to any of the people in any of the 4 state higher education systems, like the Board of Regents, or any of those people who are responsible for education?
Yes, I did speak to some representatives of higher ed, and they wanted to understand more about the bill. I gave them some information, and they had some concerns about the bill, and I think that Representative Stefanski's amendment was my attempt, or this committee's attempt, to sort of to address some of those concerns in the best way that's possible without completely gutting this bill.
I got a lot of calls on this bill, and I guess I would get them because I am an educator.
And, surprised you didn't come talk to me about the bill. If you had that many calls, I could have helped you.
Well, you didn't talk to me about it either, and you knew I was an educator. But
I actually didn't know that,
and I've not received.
I didn't receive one for being
call.
An educator. My wife's also an educator.
Okay.
Thank you for everything you've ever done.
That's a noble
education.
lady. I didn't receive one call in favor of this bill from anyone from the educational side of the arena. Did you know?
No, I didn't.
And my concern is, as an educator, I have worked in schools where parents might be a little irate on one day and could possibly have permission to carry a gun. But I can't even envision being in a school system where this is possible. That people
and that's why we brought some of the amendments to allow the schools to restrict certain areas. And as you already know, Representative Carpenter, if you looked at some of the statutes, that the Constitution, based on the Second Amendment, affords certain areas like vehicles. So, if you're in I guess you're referring to a K through 12 institution.
Yes.
So that parent or whoever it may be will have a gun or can have a firearm in their vehicle, which at the local high school that I went to, your parking lot's probably 10 foot away from the front door, and that's constitutionally protected, and that is allowed in the current law. So what would your concern be?
But the current law doesn't necessarily allow them to walk in the door of that school with the gun.
No,
and that's my point.
And if you have and let's say you were running that certain school facility and you did share those concerns, and you said, well, I don't want them in this building after Representative Stefanski's amendment, I guess, the Constitution would afford us the right to have the firearm in your vehicle. But if you had a concealed carry permit, and that'd be only that particular class of individuals, you could actually walk your child to the front door, because you have a right, and I think it's a God-given right to defend yourself.
I understand that. I do. I understand that clearly.
You have a God-given right to defend yourself and your family. And then when you walk to that front door, and I'm thinking about my beautiful 3-year-old daughter as I say this, and I give her to this school, to the school system, to the school, and I'm turning her care and custody over to you. At that point, I think it becomes a school safety issue. But up to that front door, it's a self-defense issue, and all the members in this committee should have the right to defend themselves and their family.
If I'm the teacher that's receiving your beautiful 3-year-old, the parent who comes behind you might not have the same feelings. You see, so who might be coming with a different purpose.
That's right.
My concern is perhaps you needed to have communicated.
Are you referring to a criminal?
Pardon?
Are you referring to someone that may want to seek harm on another individual?
Could be.
Well, we have a lot of gun laws that prevent.
Or it couldn't necessarily be a criminal. It could just be the neighbor next door who's upset.
Whenever they're going to enact, whether they yell at someone, whether they commit battery, or whether they try to use that firearm, if that's what we're talking about, another individual, they become a criminal. And the fact of the matter is that criminals just don't follow the law.
Miguez,
but
I would
law-abiding
think
citizens.
that you
members, let's not
excuse
talk
me.
over.
I was just trying to answer the question.
But I didn't ask you for that answer. I would think that you would have wanted to communicate with National School Board Associations or some of the teachers' unions to get their perspective on this prior to bringing this bill. I don't like this bill, and I'm going to be perfectly honest with you and say that, and I am prepared to vote against it.
I'm very supportive of the bill. I'm very supportive of individuals' right to defend themselves and their families. And I think the bill's in a very narrowly tailored fashion. And I think it's in a position where I'm hoping that the members on this committee could support this bill. But I do thank you for your concerns. And if this bill, whether it makes it out of this committee or not, I want to have those conversations with you.
I would like to have those conversations with you. Perhaps we could make it better. I don't know how, but right now I don't see it. And so I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Carter. Representative Marcel.
Thank you. Representative Miguez, I have several questions and concerns. One, I believe basically what your bill does, and correct me if I'm wrong, is turn what we've already defined as a gun-free zone, which are schools, into a welcome zone for guns.
I would disagree with that, the Representative Marcel, because the schools currently, there are exceptions on the book for guns that are allowed on school premises. It's very tightly tailored.
And that's to law enforcement officers.
Let him finish, Representative.
Is that correct?
That's one of them. There's a list of others, and we talked about some of those earlier when we talked about your vehicle being an extension of your home. If you're dealing with a higher ed institution, your dormitory being an extension of your home, and the transportation of that firearm to and from the campus. There's also situations where in current law, where the administrator of the school can give permission coercion to someone to carry a firearm. There's also exceptions for situations where the firearm could be used for an auction, at an auction event.
Let me ask you a question.
I'm trying to give you, so
Okay.
I gave you enough of those examples, and there's a lot more.
What are you trying to remedy with this bill?
Well, let me finish answering your first question. But this is only for concealed carry permit holders, so it's not free for anybody that wants to carry a firearm on the school campus. We've narrowly tailored this bill for concealed carry permit holders, which is our highest standard of law in the state of Louisiana. And these are, in my opinion, and I hope the members of this committee agree, these are the most trusted individuals, that Louisiana residents, that we have to carry a firearm.
Well, let me say this. There have been several incidents where people who are licensed to carry a firearm have killed multiple people. So are you saying that they're not criminals? What are you saying here? I'm a little bit confused. You do know in the recent...
You're referring to concealed carry permit holders killing other individuals outside of
correct. And
self-defense.
so because what I heard from you is the parent that walked in behind you, hold up, when Representative Carpenter was talking to you, you referred to them as a criminal. Right?
No, they're not. There wouldn't be a criminal until they committed a violent act.
Okay, so
criminal.
So
they had criminal intent.
But what my point is this: there are people who are licensed to carry guns, permitted, correct? And they have gone out and created havoc in our nation in a lot of instances.
With that because I don't
in
know
a lot
if
of
any,
instances.
I don't know if any statistics back that up, Representative Marcel. I think you're mistaken with just people in general that have a firearm that are not permitted, just generally carrying firearms. And I'd say there are some situations where those individuals are violent. But when you're dealing with concealed carry permit holders, I beg to differ that most of the concealed carry permit holders, these guys are law-abiding citizens because this legislative body had decided to write a very extensive concealed carry permit law in the past, which has provisions that can revoke that concealed carry permit. We don't just give the right to carry out to anyone.
I don't want to waste a lot of my time. I do have a few more questions. Are you aware that 63% of voters oppose allowing people to carry loaded guns in any school, elementary, middle, or high school? Are you aware that those are the statistics?
I haven't heard of that. That's not would be a statistic. That would be a poll. I haven't heard of that poll. Maybe it's from your district, but I think
this is from the state of Louisiana.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with your poll. Okay. I think that you'll notice that probably more than 70% of the voters in Louisiana support the Second Amendment and the right to defend themselves. And I think
Second Amendment is different from bringing a loaded gun into the school.
I think when you narrowly tailor a bill in this fashion, and when they find out that it's law-abiding citizens that have met all these steep requirements, they're allowed to carry under certain provisions. I think that that poll changes if it's even validated, and they would support this because they know that. Because I think that most people in Louisiana believe that they have the right to defend themselves and their family. That's just a God-given right.
Let me I understand what the Constitution gives you a right to do. I got that. My question is,
the Constitution doesn't give us the right. God gives us that right. It's just codified in the Constitution.
Okay, was codified in the Constitution. My question would be, if you have multiple people who are carrying permitted handguns and something breaks out to the school, they're not law enforcement officers. So if they're trying to defend someone and they start shooting, what about the people who don't want their children shot?
I can appreciate all those comments, and I think they'd be more appropriate in Representative Garofalo's bill, which is a school safety bill that dealt with teachers and students carrying firearms.
They would be appropriate anywhere where you allow people to come into a school with a loaded gun.
Members, let's let him answer.
This particular bill deals with self-defense, and thank you, Representative Stefanski, for bringing the amendment, which would still give those schools the ability to prohibit those firearms. If the school decides that they agree with you, Representative Marcel, they can still prohibit those firearms in all these different venues and facilities. We're talking about I guess you're saying the school grounds.
And that's what I'm opposed to, allowing people to come on the school grounds with loaded guns, period. I think it's a recipe for disaster, and we're really trying to find a remedy to something that we have law enforcement officers and security people that should be able to protect our children without allowing everyone to carry a loaded gun.
Law enforcement officers are great. I support those individuals tremendously. But no one
final question.
Can defend or protect themselves better than themselves, and no one can defend and protect their kids better than parents. And I think that they're the number one priority.
I understand, and my final comment would be, are there any people from education that are supporting your bill? Because I didn't see any, and I've gotten a lot of calls as well. Everybody who I've talked to in education said they do not support this bill. They do not support bringing guns.
brought an
So
amendment.
who did you speak to get? Did they, after the amendment, are they supporting your bill? Let me ask it a different way.
I'm not sure. We'll have they'll have people with green and red cords possibly. I'm not sure. That's the chairman's job to bring members up to speak. But I know they're. I would say that concealed carry permit holders and its residents in Louisiana and vast majority would support this bill due to it being narrowly tailored because they believe in the right to self-defense.
Okay. Well, I can't support your bill, but thank you.
Let's
Thank
do
you so
this.
much
Let's
for your
do-
comments.
Representative Gaines is next in the queue. Let's have Ms. Looper and Mr. Gifford come on up. And Representative Gaines, your questions for the author. So let's let those two chime in, and then you can ask your question of Representative Miguez. All right. Mr. Gifford?
Yes, my name's Nathan Gifford. I'm the state director for Louisiana Team SAS. And I support this bill. I can only hope that we do this. Let's remember that gun-free zones are where 98.4% of all the mass shootings since, I believe, 1950 have happened. And it is a silly comment to say that concealed carry permit holders are going to be a problem. They are not a problem, and the statistics prove that in this state. And as far as where people are already doing concealed carry in schools, you see that across the nation. Out in Utah and places like that, they already are doing this. They are not having a problem. Something else they're not having mass shootings either. It's like the story of the lady and the tiger. When a mass shooter goes into a school, if there are armed defenders in there and they don't know where the armed defender is, that slows him down. Every time he sticks his nose in through a door, he is a huge target to somebody with a concealed carry weapon. And what we have seen in gun-free zones are the only way to stop a shooter from shooting the students in your classroom is to put your body between them and the students in your room. I don't understand why we want to keep doing this. I've got grandchildren and worry about gun-free zones being a problem to them. And this bill addresses a lot of that. There are also programs that are available. There's nothing that requires a teacher be armed. But sure, I would much rather somebody was there who could stop somebody like that. And one thing about being a concealed carry permit holder, and I can speak to it personally, I've been one for over 10 years now, and one of the things is you have to account for every shot you fire. And if that isn't something that's going to make you pause, because if you miss, it doesn't matter what your intentions were. You're responsible for that shot. So you're going to be extremely careful and trained. And they are, in the state of Florida, they found that concealed carry permit holders were the lowest group of people to offend, even less than police. So it really makes sense to do it. And I think the biggest fear is that the students will see the concealed carry permit holder as somebody who is there to protect them, and that we've been trying to vilify guns for so long. If they suddenly feel like their teacher or somebody in the school who's a concealed carry permit holder is going to save their life, that it's going to be harder to sell the anti-gun agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Looper?
Yes, Erin Looper, the National Rifle Association. I'll try to be brief here. First of all, I want to point out, and as Representative Miguez also said, this is a self-defense bill. It's not a school security bill. So there's nothing in this bill that would expect anybody carrying to take part or serve in some sort of security system. Even further, with the two amendments, this legislation does not apply to the employees, administrators, teachers, or students, and does apply to handgun carry permit holders only, as we know have been thoroughly vetted by the state and are authorized to carry concealed handgun. I do want to address Representative Marcel's question just about the statistics, and the only reason I wanted to talk to you about this is because I was working on another bill trying to see if I could get a breakdown on some firearm homicides here in Louisiana. We were not able to actually get the breakdown. I was looking for some other identification categories for those, so I would be more than happy to continue to work with you to try to see if we can get some more information. But I was with the Uniform Crime Report from the FBI. It does not provide that for us. So again, we ask the committee to vote in favor of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Luper. Representative Gaines has a question for the author.
Yeah, Representative Miguez. You said that there are some exceptions to the gun-free zone, which allows certain individuals to be able to carry a gun. How does your bill expand those exceptions?
Well, my bill actually doesn't. You're talking about RS 1495.2. I don't go into that section. I just deal, and I had it on some of my opening comments, I deal with just RS 40. 1379.3, which for layman's terms is a concealed carry law. So it would not affect any of the gun-free zone laws or any other laws in that regard. We are here only talking about concealed carry permit holders and the ability that they have to carry a firearm.
Well, I understand, but since you've reviewed that particular law that applies to gun-free zones, I guess my question is, have you differentiated between the existing gun-free zone laws and your law, and whether or not it allows more individuals under your particular law to carry guns on the school zone?
And I appreciate the question, but I'll say again that I'm not changing any laws in reference to gun-free zones. I'm specifically changing the exceptions of the prohibitions for concealed carry permit holders. So you would only be dealing with concealed carry permit holders, and in your terms, I guess, expanding their ability to defend themselves in different in expanded areas. But when you're talking about gun-free zones, you're talking about individuals in general, and it does not change that law at all, because I don't go into that statute. This is only concealed carry permit holders, and I can't say that enough. And that's what makes this bill so narrowly tailored.
Does your bill allow additional individuals to carry guns into a school or on the school grounds that are more than already exists under the current law?
Only if they are concealed permit carry holders and they are law-abiding citizens, non-violent, that they're non-violent, they're non-substance abuse. I don't know if you had heard some of those.
I did, but it does increase or broaden the scope of those individuals who can carry into a school zone.
Yes, it is, under a very tightly tailored with the amendments that were offered by Representative Bacala and Representative Stefanski, only for concealed carry permit holders, not for just anyone that wants to carry a firearm.
Right, and I appreciate. I guess my concern is certainly not, as you said, individuals being able to protect themselves or their children. My concern is the whole. Thank you for that. Yeah, my concern is the whole scope of the dynamics of that situation, because I don't think that proliferation of guns, just personally, is the way. I think we're similar to the high grounds when we develop a love affair with guns. I don't think the proliferation of guns is the solution to the issue of hostilities that occur in society. But that's just my personal opinion. But getting back to the specifics of it, when you have there's security systems within certain schools. The police have rapid response teams. The military has rapid response teams. When you allow people, individuals, to randomly come into that situation who carry guns, it can totally throw their ability to respond to those particular crises into chaos, because the chaos response situation or hostility response situation has to be well planned, orchestrated, and it has to be able to adjust itself to fluid developments. If you bring in an increased number of individuals onto school grounds and they have to respond to a hostile situation, it could certainly hinder the law enforcement ability to rapidly respond to that situation based on these variables.
Most of your comments would be most appropriate for Representative Garofalo's bill, which deals with school safety. Mm-hmm. This bill deals with self-defense. Nothing in this bill requires any individual to carry a firearm. Nothing in this bill requires any individual to respond to any type of hostage situation or any of these situations that you described. This bill just allows law-abiding citizens who have concealed carry permit under the law the ability, if they choose, to defend themselves and their loved ones who are next to them.
No, I totally agree. But if that individual happens to be on a school ground and a hostile situation develops, nothing prevents them from being able to inject themselves into that situation. And that particular variable will totally throw a law enforcement agency the ability to respond to that, to chaos.
Everyone has their own individual right. Nothing would prevent a brave person that wasn't armed from arming themselves with anything that's near them and going to the rescue. But that's not what this bill, and that's not, it wouldn't be appropriate for this debate today is what I'm saying. I think this bill is not about school safety systems. There have been some other bills. This bill is about self-defense, and with the amendments, it really provides a lot of permissiveness to the schools to prohibit certain areas, which they believe that would meet that that situation, which a vote in support of the amendment would be a vote in support of what you just mentioned. Right.
Well, in your perspective, of course, it's kind of an idealistic view of what you would like to see happen, but that may not necessarily be what would actually happen in those type of situations. Yeah, but I appreciate it.
And that's up to the school to decide to restrict those, because they do this every day, and they can determine which facilities they want restricted and not.
Thank you.
Okay. Representative Bakla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try to be brief. I spent a little time reading this bill and the amendment. Here's what I think is the point that's being missed. Any school campus, Tiger Stadium, anyone like that can say firearms not permitted.
Under this bill currently with them.
So we can, and if you're, I think even the school campus building can say no firearms permitted. What it does is if somebody inadvertently or whatever goes into the building, they can be expelled, but they can't be arrested. So we're decriminalizing the carry into these facilities, but we're not at all restricting the ability of the administrators of a facility to say firearms not permitted. So the other thing I would like to, is that, do you agree with that? I think that's basically what I'm reading.
In a certain sense. I mean, I guess you're sort of getting into the other statutes that deal with, and the first thing that comes to mind is personal property. You know, in the concealed carry permit law now, you can only carry on private property at someone's home or business if you have their consent. So it's whether, and we're given the ability for the university to give permission, it's whether you have their consent to carry within the bounds of this law. I guess they would determine whether you're in a restricted building that they determined that they wanted to restrict, or you're just on school grounds. But
point being,
reference
they
to
can
school
restrict.
grounds, I would agree.
The school ground can say you can't bring your gun on campus, but it's not a crime if you do. But they can boot you off the campus or say you're not welcome. The part two of
in
this
certain
is,
venues and facilities.
Well, okay. Part two of this is, you know, if someone's going to a campus to commit a criminal act with a gun, and whether they're a concealed handgun carry permit holder or not, I'm pretty sure that this law is not going to prevent someone from committing that act if that's their intent to do so. So I mean, it's not
no
like
law would prevent that.
It's not like I'm going to commit a murder, but I better not do it because I might be in violation of a concealed carry law. So you know, we got to get into the. I hate to split hairs, but that's a reality as well. I'll also note that not too long ago, in this very committee, this very day, there are 11 exceptions where concealed carry cannot be concealed carry does not apply. There are 11 exceptions. Earlier today, we lessened one, and that was churches. Because up until this moment in this committee, so we've advanced one for the allowance of a church exception. So it's not really that much different. And again, I'll say this: you still can't bring a gun into Tiger Stadium on Saturday night because all they have a sign up there that said "guns not permitted." And that's all. And that just means you can't bring it. But it's a school choice and not the legislature criminalizing that, or really we're decriminalizing. Thank you. That's all I have.
Representative Bakla, to further your question or your statement, the vote today is going to be about the rights of law-abiding citizens who conceal carry permit holders, whether we're going to allow them to carry in more places or not. The vote today is not going to restrict criminals because they don't follow the law, as you said. They're not concerned with this law, with the school gun-free zones laws. They're not concerned with private property law. They're just concerned with the criminal intent of committing a violent act. And none of these criminals just simply say they just don't follow the law.
Okay. We have Representative Bagneris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Miguez.
Representative Bagneris.
We're talking about putting more guns in schools, right?
With very narrowly tailored with the amendments on, and only for a specific trusted portion of the society of Louisiana residents in particular that have concealed carry permits. I know that you got here, you didn't get to hear my opening statements, but it's very important to point out that, and I'll just hit the highlights, that concealed carry permit holders must be 21 years or older. They must be law-abiding with no prior violent convictions. They must have training, background checks by both state police and FBI, no substance abuse, no mental defects, no violent behavior, amongst a lot of other extensive requirements in our concealed carry law. And they can be revoked if you violate any one of these strict
But I wouldn't want nothing to happen to a concealed carry, okay? But
are you supporting?
No.
Okay.
In a situation where there is a school shooting and this concealed weapon person banishes his gun and the police run in and see him with a gun, he can be shot by the police.
Well, I don't think any concealed carry permit holder would brandish their firearm.
If there's a shooting, if there's a school shooting, okay, and the suspect is in the school and the SWAT team comes in and the first person they see with a gun, they will shoot him. Send a mass. And did you know today, earlier in Kenner, they caught a 17-year-old at Bonneville High School with a gun in his backpack.
And is that against the law?
I think it is against the law for somebody to come in.
The law
but
didn't
as
prevent it in that
at
scenario.
the same scenario, he could have been shot by the concealed weapons person had he not had it in his backpack and in his hand.
So the first thing you mentioned about brandishing a firearm, and you'll recognize if you ever apply for a concealed carry permit that within the training, one of the first things they train you is you never brandish your firearm. Brandishing your firearm would be a term to sort of intimidate someone that you have a firearm and that you're stronger than they are, and you're trying to get them to listen to you, which is not the intent of a concealed carry permit or the intent of carrying a firearm.
All that training goes out the window when a guy has a gun.
Gentlemen, we're not going to let him
when you pull a firearm out, you intend to use it because you are fearful of your life and you're defending yourself. So we don't brandish firearms. We defend ourselves. And I say we concealed carry permit holders. To address your second point, you talked about the venue of them being in some type of, I don't know if it was a hostage situation or some type of school shooting where police would not be able to determine who the good guys and the bad guys are. Again, I point out, as I did to Representative Gaines, that this is not a school safety bill. Under the amendments, they would still have the permissibility to restrict inside those certain facilities. So you bring up venue. Now, what's the difference between a school campus playground and a public playground? It's the same. The reality of the situation is that there are concealed carry permit holders walking around in society today, and I point out again that they are law-abiding citizens and they're around children every day. And that situation, regardless of what the venue is, would still present itself. And that's why law enforcement officers, and through the will of this legislature, and with the help of Representative James, we've strengthened their training requirements. And they're trained to discern the good guys from the bad guys. And to point out, to be more specific, Representative McNaris, in most of the situations, when you have a concealed carry permit holder that's defended himself, the police are just there to enforce the law and pick up the bodies and send them to your funeral home because it's already happened. The police cannot be a personal security force. They can't be there immediately. They do a great job, but most of the response times probably average around 10 to 15 minutes. Who is going to defend in that 10 to 15 minutes? Who is going to defend themselves and their family? And they were talking about concealed carry permit holders. So I don't think that point carries a lot of weight in this discussion, this debate, because in all due respect, you're a target shooter. You don't shoot at people, right? Oh, I don't shoot at people.
All right, so it's a difference in shooting at a person and shooting at a target, especially when that target shoots back.
I realize that.
So you have to,
is that a personal
in your
question?
mind, quickly make that decision because who shoots first is the person that lives.
I can attest personally, it's not fun to be shot at, and it does change the scenario.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. What we're going to do, we have a lot more questions in the queue. if the members don't mind, let's let the opposition come up and speak, and then I'll yield questions to the author when he comes back. Okay?
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Also filling out cards in support is Scott Brown, Home Defense Foundation, Sarah Stewart from Abita Springs, Ronald, is it Stern? HDF, and then Michael Burris, Home Defense Foundation. Thank you, gentlemen. Why don't we have Cynthia Posey from the Louisiana Federation of Teachers come up? We have Sharon, is it Selu from Watson, Louisiana, and Debbie Mew, President, Louisiana Association of Educators, would also like to speak. So come on up, and we're going to do ladies first from right to left. So Ms. Posey.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman, Committee. Cynthia Posey with the Louisiana Federation of Teachers. When the state passed these gun-free zones, legislators overwhelmingly voted for them. They exist for a good reason. We support them, and we believe that there's no rational reason for a person who is not a law enforcement professional to carry a weapon on the school campus. HB 602 would effectively negate that law in cases where citizens hold a concealed carry permit. Imagine the confusion and fear in a school when a student, administrator, or teacher sees a person carrying a gun. They don't know that this person has a concealed carry permit. You know, you have no idea. So the proper protocol would be to have a school lockdown. So at that point, you know, that disrupts the entire school day. So let me stress that a firearm in a school is intimidating. If this bill becomes law, it would mean that student, teachers, and administrators would have to consider that any visitor in a school could be carrying a deadly weapon. We believe that it would have a chilling effect on the day-to-day operations of a school, and the presence of a deadly weapon on campus in the hands of anyone other than a trained law enforcement professional would make schools less safe. One of our other concerns, it was brought up by Representative Gaines and Representative Bagneris, is that in a situation where law enforcement has been called in, you don't know who the shooter is and who the good guy is if they both have guns. Bad guns and good guns, they all look alike. We urge you to vote against this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Posey. Did I say Sadhu right?
Swallow.
Swallow, okay.
Close enough.
Yes, ma'am. Welcome to the Capitol.
Thank you. I appreciate you letting me speak with you this morning. I am not a elected official. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a lobbyist, except perhaps for today for a few minutes. I'm a grandmother, and I'm here because of my grandchildren who range from high school to preschool. And my fears for them brought me to join the Moms Demand Action Group, who are a part of Everytown for gun safety with 4 million members. And I knew after Parkland, after I sat in front of that television for hours and finally texted my granddaughter, and I wasn't really allowed to do that, I knew I had to do something, that flowers and candles weren't going to get it anymore. And I am a little old to start new hobbies, new habits, but I feel strongly that these children need to be safe in our schools, and I think we've dropped the ball there. My generation and your generation, we've dropped that ball and we need to fix it. But this bill is not it. Putting more guns into a school situation is not going to make that school safer. I also almost fell out of my chair at the amendment to then allow students also to carry guns in the schools. I don't understand the logic there. I guess you have to be 21 to get a gun carry permit, so hopefully none of the students in the high schools and middle schools and so forth are affected there. But the college students, with their excess drinking, possibly drugs, the high percentage of suicides, not to mention the hazing at their fraternities and sororities and so forth. I'm not sure I want them carrying guns. And there have been so many points made that by Representative Marino and Representative Carpenter that were things I was going to bring up, and I'm glad they stole my thunder. I don't mind a bit. But I too had the same statistics about the percentage of Louisiana voters who are against guns in schools. And I know that we are all in a rush to solve this problem. Everybody wants something done to see that it stops happening in our schools. But I think we should not rush and pass a bill that we might regret later. And I think this is one of those cases. I think we need to spend more time and more consideration and come up with the right solutions. And I think you people can do that. I respect what you do. I know you have difficult jobs and a lot of times thankless jobs, but I do thank you for what you do, and I hope that you will put deep consideration into this bill. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, ma'am. And then we have, yes, sir.
My name is Tom Tate, and I'm here for Debbie Moe. Debbie is in Senate Education Committee.
Did you fill out a card?
I did not, but I'll get one because I was waiting for her to come back.
Fill out a red card for us, okay?
Okay,
all right.
I will.
No, go ahead.
Again, my name is Tom Tate with the Louisiana Association of Educators. We're opposed to the bill even with the amendments. We quite frankly believe that the correct responses from security guards, from police officers, school resource officers. And as a matter of fact, we did a poll of our own people, telephone poll, when these first bills came out, and more than 75% of our membership opposed to guns in schools. Even though the bill has been amended, there's still a lot of opposition for it. And we'd like to also let you know that this has nothing to do with the Second Amendment. You know, the Second Amendment is, heck, I used to be a hunter too way back when. Then I found out I could hit a golf ball a lot better than I could hit a critter in a tree or in woods. But I still hit a golf ball in there. But anyway, the important part is that we're still opposed to it, even with the amendments, and I still think that you ought to vote against it.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Also filling out card in opposition is Rachel Gassert. Yes, Representative Bacala.
All right. I think there's a misunderstanding. I went and talked to the author of the amendments, and the students that you refer to, they're specifically now excluded from any change here. So we're not giving them any permission to carry. They're one of the groups that it does not apply to this statute.
Great.
Thank you. Yes,
Thank
ma'am.
you,
Just
ma'am.
wanted to make sure you understood that these things are hard to follow, but that's, yes.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, we have Rachel Gassert from New Orleans, Louisiana. Kevin Hayes, representing the Chief of Police. Fabian Blash, Executive Director, Louisiana Association of Chief of Police. Rachel Estevan, Louisiana Partnership for Children and Families. Haney and Associates, representing Everytown. Rodney Braxton, SUS System Foundation. Deborah Schuem, Louisiana Association of Principals. Jennifer Carlisle, Progressive Social Network. Bernadette Chatelaine of NOLA, New Orleans. Rob Tassman, Louisiana Conference of Catholic Bishops. David Brown, Baton Rouge Progressive Network. And filling out a card for informational purposes is Jason Drudy from LSU, or Drody. Okay, let's have the author back at the table. Yes, sir. Against. These are the cards in opposition. Okay, so who did? No, he finished. Representative James, I believe, had a question for the author.
I'll wait.
You wait? Okay. Representative Norton, question for the author.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Norton.
Representative Miguez, let me set the record straight. before I ask you my question.
Okay, sure.
I received information on today where all 4 higher ed systems are opposed to this bill. I heard you make reference to speaking with them and trying to get something pretty much together, but they are still in opposed of this bill. All 4 systems are. And if you would, I would appreciate it. Let me kind of get my questions out before you start answering them in the middle of the questions, so that way I can kind of pretty much wrap it.
When they answer.
Okay, okay, I will. That's not a problem.
Let's get to it.
I believe when we as legislators walk in this building, I believe that our safety is in the state police, is in security. I've never, and I may be mistaken, I've never heard you say anything about bringing a bill to make sure that we as legislators are safe in this building and that we can bring guns in here. So we entrust in the state troopers, you know, our lives. And when we walk out of here, we have security guards who are walking out with us to make sure that we are safe. I've never heard anyone say, I got to have my gun to come in the Capitol. I got to have my gun to go out of the Capitol, to walk out of the Capitol. So I believe when we send our children to school and our grandchildren, I am a grandmother, I don't have any children in school, I believe we entrust in the principal and we entrust in the security at that school. It really bothers me, and this doesn't have anything to do with your rights as carrying a gun. I've heard several people make mention of that, and I want to follow their lead on that. When I think about the fact that now we're taking responsibility off of our teachers to stop teaching to carry a gun, to say that, you know, I'm ready to be a part of the Wild Wild West in case anything happens in the school today. And I'm concerned about one of those children maybe getting their hands on that gun. There was a 2-year-old that shot a 4-year-old just the other day. Someone left their gun in the car. Children are more or less interested in things that they are not supposed to be interested in, that are not safe. I believe at the end of the day, we will be voting.
Representative Norton, you have a question?
Yeah, I'm going to ask.
Okay.
Did you know?
Let's get to our question.
Thank you. I believe at the end of the day, we will be making a great mistake in our schools if we ask the superintendent to be responsible for people's lives. Do you think that we should put the responsibility on the superintendent of the state of Louisiana and on our teachers and take the right away from security who we hire to protect our children? You can talk now.
Thank you, Representative.
You're welcome.
I was waiting.
Thank you for being so kind.
Again, I'll bring it up that this bill is about self-defense. It doesn't get into school safety. There were some other bills brought by Representative Garofalo, Representative Emerson, that deal with student carrying, and that dealt with also teachers having the ability to carry a firearm, and those have been vetted by this committee. This deals with a specific class of individuals, concealed carry permit holders. I'll leave it up to the chairman, and I'm just addressing some of the points that you made. I'll leave it up to the chairman to speak on who put in a red card against the bill. But I can assure you one thing, Representative Norton, as you've assured me a lot of times when we worked on bills together, that I will work with any opposition and have those discussions to see if we can make this bill better, if the committee would oblige me to move it through the process. It's important to point out that at the state capitol, it's full of state police. We have, I think, maybe just 4 of them just in the hall behind us, but we don't have that type of security in our schools. And when you're provided adequate security, it kind of changes the situation a little bit. I'm not bringing that bill today because I'm trying to bring a narrowly tailored bill and specific on this. The last point I'll make is that you talked about an incident where there was a child that had accidentally grabbed a gun and it fired. And just so you know, I had brought a bill before about the Eddie Eagle program to educate elementary kids on the dangers related to firearms. Unfortunately, I didn't get your support on that piece of legislation, but now hopefully this legislation, this curriculum is being used in our school systems, that you'll understand the importance of educating children on the dangers related to firearms. And we want to do everything we can to protect our children. And that's all I'm trying to do, Representative Norton, is give these law-abiding citizens who have a concealed carry permit the ability to protect themselves and their their loved ones. And I say that with all respect, Representative Norton. Thank you so much for your comments.
And, and let me just comment just on a couple of things that you made reference to. Whatever your bill was, it probably was the same bill that I brought that you didn't vote for, so we are both on the same page. But
we're just filling each other out.
Yeah, let me also say that I'm happy.
And I was new at the time.
I'm happy to hear you say that you'll be glad to work with anyone that want to work with you
I think
related to what you are attempting to do. And if you really mean that and you really mean to keep that, then I would suggest that you involuntarily defer this bill and let's go back and let's see what it is that we can do to make schools much safer than what they are at this particular time. And you and I have worked on several things together, but this is one that I believe at the end of the day, it's not the right thing, but I believe that you're going to try it anyway. But I've got to vote against it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
I think this is the right thing to do, and what I meant to clarify, I work with members as I move this bill through the process.
Representative Duplessis.
Hey, Representative Miguez. We spoke briefly before you presented today, and we talked about the importance of keeping an open mind. And
yes,
I gave you my word that I would, and I listened and continue to listen. You mentioned that this is not a school safety matter, but this is a self-defense matter. I disagree. And I disagree because this is a school safety matter. If this were just purely a self-defense matter, my thoughts and response in keeping an open mind is there is the option of homeschool if you feel that concern about your safety or the safety of your child. I come from a line of educators, a serious line of educators. And I believe at the end of the day, we may not agree, you and I, on terms of where we stand with respect to the Second Amendment and our interpretation of one's ability to defend himself and his family. But I could never support the idea of giving teachers or anyone at a school more guns to make anyone feel safer, personally. And if I did, then that would, in my opinion, be a school safety issue, because we're talking about one's safety at school. So I just don't think it's right for us to try to separate the two. That's the first piece. The second piece is, it kind of goes back to a comment that Representative Bagnaris made about the situation that we're all preparing for, or that I believe your bill is intended to prepare for if there were a shooter at a school, a teacher, or someone who has the ability to carry this concealed weapon can defend himself or others. Have you ever been in that situation?
In a live fire scenario? I've never been shot at a school. I've been shot at, but not at a school.
I just find it interesting, and I'm always fascinated by this heightened anticipation that we're always gearing up for in the event of, when most of us, a large percentage of us, the majority of us, have never been in that situation, and despite all of the training in the world, will not be able to adequately and safely protect ourselves. So those are just my thoughts.
I appreciate your thoughts.
I am trying my best to keep an open mind on this.
Yes.
It's clear to me that the education community does not support this bill. I do not support this bill, and I just think that this notion that it's not a school safety measure, I disagree with that. This is a school safety measure.
And I respectfully disagree. I think it is about self-defense, and it's not about school safety. But I appreciate your comments, Representative, and thank you for having an open mind. And if this bill were to move forward in the process, if you have some concerns, please come to me and express them, and I'll try to work with you the best that I can to get the best legislative instrument moving forward.
Representative Hodges.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Miguez, I just wanted to ask you a question. Did you know the bill that Representative Garofalo had that was arming teachers was we basically killed that in this committee? Did you know that?
It did not receive favorable passage. It did not move to the floor. That's correct.
That's right. But
by a split vote.
I have another question. Did you know that Florida, that we referenced the school shooting in Parkland, Florida, that killed 17 children and a couple of teachers, I believe. 17 people died. Did you know that Florida just passed a gun bill? The legislature just passed a gun bill allowing teachers to be armed in the classroom.
If they choose to
If
arm
they choose,
themselves.
if they choose, obviously.
Well, I don't think it's the guns on campus issue is not just Florida. If you just look through it, there's probably around 13, 15, and maybe the guys behind me, the NRA, can testify to the fact that school campus carry, which was Julie Emerson's bill, is probably in 15 states now, and it's growing. And you also see in the talk nationally about teachers being able to defend themselves in the classroom, and I think you'll hear more conversation about that. I think my prediction is you'll have more states adopt those kind of laws, because I think that they have a strong belief in the right to defend yourself, which Representative Hodges, you could appreciate, is a God-given right.
I do appreciate that.
Law-abiding citizens have.
And one of the things that stood out to me when I read the article was that the 17 family members are the ones who backed that measure in Florida. The family members of those who died. And I know that was my thought, that, I have 4 small little girls in school. And that's the only line of defense immediately when someone shows up. Yes, it may take the police 10 minutes to get there, but how many people can be killed during that first 10 minutes? And I know this is not what your bill does, but I just want to say thank you for bringing this bill. It is about school safety and keeping our children safe. Hopefully, God forbid, that never happens here in Louisiana or anywhere else in the United States, but it is a protective measure, and I believe it's a deterrent, and it is a matter of self-defense. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Representative Hodges. Hope I can count on your support in this measure.
Okay. Representative Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Miguez, do you know what the most effective method of protection is? It's prevention. It's deterrence. And that's the most effective. And that's why we have a military, standing military all around the world, ships, planes, everywhere. It's deterrence. It puts our enemies on notice that there's always possibility that they're going to be retaliated against if they start anything. I would say that having this bill and having this pass just puts the criminals on notice. Hey, you don't know. Someone may be there between their car and the school or whatever authorized events. There may be someone there, so you better think twice. And you also know most soldiers and policemen have never been in a live fire situation.
But they train every day for it.
They train every day for it, but they've never been in it. It's a very rare thing. We hope to keep it rare. And I think it's rare because people know there are people out there ready to defend themselves and others when that time comes.
Representative Cruz, I pray they're never in that situation, but if they are, I hope that they have all the resources available to defend themselves.
I do too. Thank you very much, Representative Miguez.
Thank you, Representative James.
I changed my mind, Mr. Chairman. Representative Miguez, you have, all of the people that this bill is intending to protect against your bill. What do you say to that? You got the higher education community against it. You have the, K through 12 community. And you have law enforcement, the folks that we do put and that do go through that training every single day. What do you say to me? Because I have those concerns. I know you're attempting to protect folks, but those very folks that you want to protect are opposed to the bill.
Again, it's not a school safety bill. This is a self-defense bill, and this bill is aimed to protect the individual to defend themselves and his family. And this bill is not about school safety. It's not about protecting a school or protecting a higher ed institution. This is about a concealed carry permit holder having the ability to defend himself and protect himself and his loved ones. And if we could go and poll all the concealed carry permit holders out there, I think an overwhelming majority, supermajority, would support this ability to protect themselves. So in the light of those comments, I think that this bill aims to protect them, and I think they have their support on this bill.
I just haven't heard from them, and I have heard from the folks that we keep mentioning schools, and I know you have your talking points are on point. You're staying on message. I get that, but this quite frankly, no. I mean,
could you like that? Answer Representative James.
Yeah, I mean, you have prepared your talking points. You are. I got it.
We don't need talking points, Representative. This is. I really truly believe this.
I know you do. And I really truly believe that when law enforcement, those folks that are trained, and they go through extensive training and do this, when they're saying no, that gives me some concern.
Well, I talked to the Sheriff's Association. They're neutral on this bill. Did you know?
I'm talking about the police. the police,
They
the
are
fraternal order police,
I haven't spoke to the police,
the cars
fraternal
that we
order.
heard, Mr. Blash and all those groups.
And we shouldn't take away the fact that law enforcement is highly trained, and it doesn't matter the venue. They are trained to discern who the good guys and the bad guys are, and they're there to do their job of enforcing the law whenever they arrive. And we shouldn't take anything away from them.
Yeah, and that's why I'm trying to give them all the regard that they deserve. And, you know, I share the same concerns that they do for your bill. And I know we keep talking about the law-abiding citizens, but, you know, all these mass shootings that we keep talking about, before most of these folks were popular names to us, they were the same law-abiding citizens that you're talking about.
I beg to differ. Most of these individuals had mental issues, or they had some type of substance abuse problem, and that's why. And I'm happy that you brought that up. That's why I narrowly tailored this bill for concealed carry permit holders. And I encourage you to look at the concealed carry permit code, read all 3 or 4 pages of it. It's very extensive. If you have a mental defect, if you exhibited violent behavior, you've been convicted of a violent crime, a sex crime, domestic abuse crime in most cases, then you're not allowed to even take advantage of this law, because you're not the law-abiding citizen that I'm talking about today. You're a criminal, and not you, Representative, but
I know
that
you're not talking to
individual
me.
would be a criminal.
Yeah, but you know, under your definition, and we could go back and forth. We could have
it's not my definition. It's in
debate
the code.
on the law. I know the law. I graduated from the same law school you did, probably with a better GPA. And you know, you're my friend, so we're joking. So we're joking. Right. It's not personal. You know, even with all these mass shooters, you know, all of these folks that you're talking about, before they became popular names to us, they fit all those definitions. They walked in, they legally obtained guns, and with your bill, we're giving them a free pass too. You know, we're talking about
we're all born with all these rights, and at some point that some of these individuals make a mistake in their life and they lose these rights. So I don't think that's a very valid point that you can make, because we're only allowing this this right of a concealed carry permit holders for those who haven't made those mistakes in their past, and who's exhibited that they are the highest standard individuals in our society.
Can you answer this question for me? How many mass shooters were concealed permit holders before they became mass shooters? Most of them, and that's a fact.
I tend to disagree with that. I don't have the statistics in front of me. Obviously, you may have got some, but I'll let maybe we can address that at a later date once I'm able to research that. But I wouldn't agree with that statement.
I help you research.
Okay, and I encourage everyone listening that if you are a concealed carry permit holder, please contact Representative James and let them know how important this bill is to you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Representative Cruz, last question.
Representative Miguez, I just had one question. A lot of mentions been made of different associations and their positions. Are associations generally the leadership? Do they democratically determine their position on issues?
No, I think every association has their own rules on how they determine things. But
so you think it might be a stretch to say if a teachers organization is against this idea that all teachers are against it?
No, I wouldn't say that would be the case. I just think that whoever's running the organization and whoever they polled or members of that committee, maybe whatever their bylaws recommend, if it's majority vote or unanimous, that some of their members are, but I wouldn't think that'd be accurate across the board to all.
And whatever group you're a member of, if the leadership takes a position, you think it's a real popular and comfortable idea to ever speak out against that?
What's that?
Say your organization, the leadership says we're against guns, and I like this idea. Do you think it's very comfortable to speak out there and speak against that?
It's not very comfortable. And it's also not comfortable to no longer be a member of it, because you may have joined that association for a particular reason because they promote your industry, but you have a personal, individual opinion about maybe the Second Amendment, and you value it to a heightened degree, and you don't want to get caught in a conflict of interest with that association. And that happens every day in every association, I'm sure.
That's a good point. Thank you.
All right, guys. Okay. Representative Carter, is your comment brief?
It is Carpenter.
Yes, ma'am.
It is very brief.
Okay.
In addressing what the associations do and how they represent, that's why people pay their dues to those associations. And so the leadership speaks the wishes of the organization. And that works both ways.
Not on all issues.
It works. It works both ways. So for those who come and speak for organizations, they represent the wishes of that group, and those who speak against. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. We're good.
Make one quick statement.
Why don't you do your close?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll make it brief. House Bill 602 And to repeat, this bill allows law-abiding citizens who have been vetted by state and federal government and have received a concealed carry permit the right to defend themselves on certain school property. Please strengthen these Louisiana citizens' rights of self-defense by voting favorably on this bill today. Thank you for your time, your patience, and your consideration. Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Representative Stefanski has made a motion to report. Yes, he indicated that's what he wanted to do. Representative Stefanski has made a motion to report the House Bill 602 favorable as amended. Representative Marcel, I believe, was first in the objection. So Representative Marcel objects. A vote yes will be to move the bill to the floor as amended. A vote no will be to not. Ms. Spivey, please take the roll.
Representative Bacala? Yes. Yes. Representative Bagneris? No. Representative Carpenter? No. Representative Cruz?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Duplessis?
No.
No. Representative Dwight?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Gaines? No. Representative Hazel?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Hodges?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Howard? Yes. Representative James? No. Representative Marcel?
No.
No. Representative Marino?
No.
No. Representative Muscarello?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Norton?
No.
No. Representative Pilot?
Yes.
Yes. Representative Stefanski?
Yes.
Yes. 9 yeas, 8 nays.
The bill is reported favorable.
Thank you so much for
As
your
amended.
consideration today and your time.